even if you say there's a 20% tariff on UK exports, the calculation is the British industry could face a £22 billion loss, hitting sectors like automotive, pharmaceuticals, and steel. For example, our automotives industry export £8 billion to the US,
Yes.
pharmaceuticals £6 billion. You could see job cuts, whiskey, products like whiskey would also suffer.
Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada took effect this morning. He's also added an extra 10% to tariffs on Chinese imports, taking that to 20%, though in some cases, for example on Chinese electric vehicles, the tariffs are 100%. All three countries have either announced or are preparing to announce retaliatory measures. And when the president was asked about a trade deal with Argentina last night, he instead, never a surprise with Trump, said he was looking at things with the UK. Whether that will include tariffs on Britain remains to be seen. Let's speak to Karen Billimoria. She's chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, UK. Karen Billimoria, thank you for joining me. We still don't know what tariffs are in store for the European Union, so we don't know what's in store for Britain either. How realistic is it in your view now to expect Mr. Trump to make a British exception?
The bigger message from the Trump administration seems to be that everyone is now in the firing line, whether you're allies, friends, neighbors, foes, G7, G20, NATO. Everyone is now in the frame when it comes to tariffs from the United States. And I think this is a critical moment now that the global community needs to pull together and respond collectively, because let's keep this in perspective. The United States makes up 12% of global trade. The rest of the 88% of us want to get on with it and get on with business. And when it comes to the UK, it's not as simple as saying, well, we're out of the EU, and if the United States imposes tariffs on the EU, well, we're going to be exempt from it, possibly. It doesn't work like that, because the UK trades with just about every country in the world, and whether we like it or not, the European Union still makes up well over 40% of our trade. So anything that affects the European Union is going to affect us. And this is the irony of it all, is that these protectionist measures by Trump are going to backfire and bite America hardest of them all. Well, and that's why you're seeing the stock markets already reacting.
Indeed. And I want to come on to that about the broader economic impact. But before I do, Canada and Mexico are waking up now to 25% tariffs on their exports to America, and America is their biggest market by far. What would be the impact of 25% tariffs on British exports to America?
Well, even if you say there's a 20% tariff on UK exports, the calculation is the British industry could face a £22 billion loss, hitting sectors like automotive, pharmaceuticals, and steel. For example, our automotives industry export £8 billion to the US,
yes.
Pharmaceuticals £6 billion. You could see job cuts, whiskey, products like whiskey would also suffer. So, it is going to affect us. There's no question about it. Tariffs will affect the UK, although the United States is by far the UK's #1 trading partner as a single country.
Yes.
And we have a trade surplus with the United States, unlike other countries. We're in a trade deficit, including with the EU. We have a surplus, and a lot of it is services exports to the United States.
Which wouldn't be covered by tariffs.
Which wouldn't be covered by tariffs. So it's not going to affect us as much. But I've just said that even a 20% tariff on goods, £22 billion, that's not a small amount of money.
Well, let me put something to you that isn't talked about very much. Trump is also talking about reciprocal tariffs. If you put a 10 or if you have a 10% tariff on my cars, I'll put a 10% tariff on your cars. No more, no less. Could the British government not avoid all Trump tariffs by just saying on all goods coming in, put aside agriculture, but all goods coming into Britain from America, we're going to 0% on these US exports to us. So under your reciprocal approach, Mr. Trump, 0% on our goods exports to you.
Yeah, well, we don't have very high duties in this country in any case.
No, but go to zero.
And again, when you talk about a free trade, say a free trade agreement with the United States of America, we tried twice to do an FTA with America over the last 10 years. It's
I
not
understand that.
easy.
If I may interrupt you, I wasn't talking about a free trade agreement because that's very complicated, and agriculture will be dragged in, which makes it even more complicated.
Exactly.
I was simply saying, given that our tariffs against American goods are not very high to begin with, why don't we just cut them to zero? Then we can say to Mr. Trump, we're not charging you any tariffs. You like reciprocity, so you have no case for charging us.
Yeah, in the same way that with the EU, the agreement we have with the EU is a very basic agreement, the trade agreement that we have with the EU compared with what we had before, but it's basically a duty-free agreement.
Yes.
And there is no reason why we cannot say to the United States of America as well, can we trade on that basis? And the main thing is that they need to exempt us. And they seem to be at the moment, the way that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is playing this actually has been very impressive. And he's got cross-party support in trying to be a bridge with America. And whether we like it or not, the United States and the UK have a special relationship. And we must never take it for granted. And this is a time when we've got to bring it to the fore where we can lead the world in helping America to see sense, whether it's a bridge between the EU or with other countries in the world. And this is our position where, as a global power, not a superpower, as the sixth largest economy in the world, this is our opportunity to actually really try and get the Americans to see sense in a pragmatic way.
Final question on the broader economic danger, which goes way beyond Britain. Canada and Mexico could, 80% of their exports go to the United States. They could be thrown into recession by these Trump tariffs. It could mean slower growth and higher inflation for America itself, where inflation's already still about 3% and growth is showing signs of faltering. Overall, it could have a dampening effect on the global economy, I would suggest, and it's not therefore a benign environment for Britain's ambition to grow faster.
Absolutely. And this is the whole point. This will hamper the ability to grow. I mean, forget the current government's increases in taxes and all the measures they're putting in place, which are quite frankly anti-growth. So we've got that to battle with. If we're going to have this as an additional barrier with the effect of tariffs, which will affect everyone around the world, including America itself. And America is a huge threat of stagflation, where they're going to have increased inflation, because what will happen if you have tariffs, they get passed on to the consumer. So prices go up. And then if you have lower growth, let alone possibly a recession, the American economy is going to be harmed. So that's why I think you're shooting yourself in the foot by starting trade wars. Tariff wars never work. Historically, you've seen it. It has never worked in the past. This is not the way to go forward.
On these words, Karen Billimoria, we'll leave it, but we thank you for joining us, Chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, UK. Now, next on The Times at 1, Noah Rothman, one of America's best-respected commentators, who'll try to make sense of this new world order that we seem to be entering.